Drums, please.
Why, north, west, south side, right, why, yeah, now here it is.
So today is an interesting topic for me, poker life advice, because I am actually writing a book about this. I'm not hawking the book because it's not available, so I just wanted to talk about the concept of it and really kind of get a gauge for how interesting it might be. Because I'm trying to write it in the sense that you don't have to be a poker player to understand it. Maybe you can learn a little bit about poker by reading about it, but it's really sort of my personal story about how poker has helped my life and helped me navigate the world by using poker strategy in real life situations, such as navigating through traffic is a big one, navigating corporate spaces and even relationships. Some of the big topics for me are understanding probabilities and statistics, the likelihood that something's going to happen, the value of things, because often based on the luck factor, you would often have to make the sizing of your bet based on the probability of how well your hand's going to hit. So if you've got 4 cards to a flush and you need 1 more card and you've still got 2 cards to come, statistically that's a 4.5 to 1 chance that's going to hit. There's this gorgeous fog I'm running through right now. I'm driving through. Every once in a while we get this nice fog in the morning, and it kind of looks Walking Dead-ish. It's really fantastic. I just want to take photos of everything while I talk and drive and be the most dangerous person ever. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the logistics of that. So basically, poker strategy has helped me to understand the value of things more than I would have otherwise. So with the 4.5 to 1 possibility, it's like you have to make sure that you're getting 4.5 to 1 at minimum on your money in the pot. So if the pot is worth $100, you would have to, the bet would have to be no more than $20 for it to make sense for you to take the risk. So it's really about risk assessment, risk aversion, making sure that you are making intelligent decisions about the risks that you're taking. And there's really a lot more of a deliberate nature about it. You're not just going out there and taking a wild chance. You're looking at the odds and seeing how everything will pan out. Traffic's not moving, so I'm like, photo time. That might work, but my hand's in the way. That's stupid. Done. Alright. I'm not going to do that anymore. I won't scare you, I promise. It's going to be great. But it's just too good. The sun was like peeking through the fog, and it's gorgeous. Anyway, back to anchor things. So, the value is a big one. Percentages, assessing people is another big one that I'm going to elaborate on in the next few. The people is the big one, because poker is really a people game. You watch the person that's playing. You watch their mannerisms, their tics, because most people aren't aware of their own little shortcomings, their own little revelations about the things that they do based on their emotional responses. So if you get a good hand, somebody is more likely to be a little bit calmer. If you're trying to bluff, somebody will likely do more nervous tics. They're actually more likely to try to do reverse psychology and stare you in the eye and say, you should probably fold. That's usually a pretty good sign that they're bluffing. So you can use that one as a pretty sure bet. Unless they're a good player, then they might actually use that against you. So make sure you take time to assess whether or not they're actually a person that knows what they're doing, because they can reverse you, so that can get a little tricky. And sometimes I've ran into people who are a little bit arrogant in poker. Some of these young guns that have been playing a lot of hands online, which was me, I guess, at the time. But I got to this point where you could see through the arrogance where these guys have not had a lot of in-person experience, and they're very distracted by their phones and the things that they're doing, and not really paying attention to the people at the table. And you can always take advantage of that. So next, I'll talk about the people aspect, because I think that's the most interesting. So poker is a people game. Much like life is very much a people game, way more than a lot of us will likely admit. We're social creatures, and I think that's the beauty of it. People really like the social aspect. A lot of men really like the competitive nature, but there's a lot of ribbing each other, and certain like honor codes and honor systems and unwritten rules. So there's a certain samurai-ness to poker, which is kind of interesting. When you get into the community and you start to understand how the game is played, you sort of have a feel for like things you should or shouldn't do. We know one of the first things that you should do when you sit at the table is make friends with the person to your left and to your right, because all of the action goes clockwise. So you want to make sure that if you're being extra friendly with the person on each side of you, that they will more likely go easy on you, just because of human nature. If you're charming and friendly, occasionally they'll play a hand because their hand's too good. But I've had situations where a guy's had a pair of kings to start off, and we've been both in the blinds, which is the last to act, and nobody else is in the pot, and he's like, I can't fold this, but let's throw $10 in and see what happens. And that saves a ton of money, because it saves me a ton of money, because he could have just tried to milk me for as much as he could. But instead, because of how friendly we were to each other, like, he kind of went easy on me and said, like, I don't want to take your money, but hey, let's run this out. I'm curious for the luck aspect of it. And that can be fun, but it's also nice to not run into situations where you could have your money taken. So that's good, because sometimes it's hard to read players when they're right next to you. It's harder to see their face and see what's going on there. So making friends with your immediate neighbors, and that kind of works in your home life too. You want to be friends with your neighbors in case you need things, in case you need something from them, need them to, often your neighbors are watching over your house without you even realizing that that's happening. They're kind of noticing unusual activity, or the usual activity, so they'll be aware if there's any unusual activity and be able to tell you if something's wrong or something's weird, or they'll be more likely to approach you if something weird happens in their backyard. A tree falls down, and they'll be like, hey. If you've been a jerk to them, they're just going to be like, whatever, let him deal with it. But if you got some nice neighbors and people that you've made friends with, they'll be more likely to help you in different situations, or randomly give you a casserole or something. I don't know. People on the poker table are not likely going to do that, but they might go easy on you in the sense that, because if the person to your right is always going to act before you do, unless you're the first person to act at the table, to make an action, whether that's to raise, fold, call, whatever. And they're going to do that first every time. So I'd say they're pretty important in the sense that they will likely not do much. If they're the first person, like if everybody's just calling, which means just meeting the minimum bet, and they have a good hand, they may not raise, depending on their level of amateurness, they may not raise the hand because you're to the left, because they appreciate and respect you, and they may not want to do that. An advanced player will raise no matter what. Even plenty of amateurs will do it no matter what. But they're less likely to raise for no good reason. Because they're bored, or they want to try to steal the pot or something like that. So they'll be friendly to you. And then person to the left of you is acting after you, so they're kind of the most dangerous, in the sense that you could end up spending money limping into the pot, which means paying the minimum, and right after that they will raise, and you end up wasting your minimum because your hand was not good enough to raise to begin with. So it's definitely not good enough to call a raise. So in that sense, in both the poker sense and the life sense, it's good to respect your neighbors and respect each other. So it's a very friendly game. So if you're trying to get people to go easy on you or have more ways of controlling the situation, being nice to people is a way to do that. And that works in life and that works in poker.
If you've been dying to start that podcast about doves, or about your favorite jacket, or about a long-lost love, or a murder mystery about a cat who murdered everybody, you can start it now on Spotify for podcasters. I've been on Anchor for a long time, and now it is officially Spotify for podcasters, and it has been a platform that has been growing for forever. And I love it, and I still use it to this day, and it has hosted this podcast for 500 plus episodes now. So I highly recommend it. It is free to use. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. I'm literally on my bed recording on my, the phone is on the bed, and I'm just talking, and it's not that complicated. And then you can distribute your podcast on Spotify and everywhere else that podcasts are heard. So video podcasts are available too if you want to show your pretty face and have people see you. And you can do all that too. So just do it. It's totally free. No catch. Give it a try. Spotify for podcasters. Let's go.
So another part of the people game is observing people. Really, that's a big thing that I learned about poker, is to kind of be aware of your surroundings, aware of people, and aware of kind of like the unwritten laws and honor codes that people like to live by. Because there is a certain rule of conduct within poker that's kind of interesting, particularly when it pertains to like cell phones at the table. Making sure that you're aware of when it's your turn, when it's time to go, keeping the flow of the game. Often people will turn on you if you're not keeping the flow of the game, or if you're taking too long to think, without a quick little like apology. I like to throw that in there. Like, if I need an extra minute to think about a hand, and usually people are very understanding if there's like a lot of money in the pot, and they're like, they're like, okay, take your time. But also, while someone's thinking, to not speak too loud, to make sure you're giving them the room to breathe. Another good thing, and I know it's so bad because people see it in movies all the time, do not do the thing where you let them show their cards first, make them think that they won, and then reveal your winning hand. That's no good. Don't do that. That's bad. You will get beat up in the parking lot for that. So that's a good practical poker thing. But there's certain unwritten rules of etiquette that I think are interesting, and how you navigate the corporate world and traffic and relationships. It's kind of understood that you go to a date and you're kind of like expected to kind of give your best and, dress up a little bit, or have certain expectations that you're supposed to meet, minimum requirements, as it were, showing an effort, trying, being aware, fitting within a community, trying to fit within the space a little bit. And I'm not necessarily saying that you have to like completely conform. You could totally still be badass punk rock, but at the same time, you should respect the rules, whether or not you follow them. Because often if you're so aggressively against the rules, it's going to work against you. You have to kind of give in a little bit. And just, it's a matter of respect in the game, and for poker, it's a matter of respect for the people and for the game. If somebody's being a jerk, I'm not going to give them my personal respect, and it's not going to be a thing. But for me, because I want to live within this community, because I want to play the game, and I want to be able to do this without a hitch, without people turning on me, it's appropriate for me to follow the system and follow the rules. Same thing with the corporate environment. I've had the issues where I've always had authority issues. I've always had a problem with corporate structure. I've been lucky to work in this job, Freudian slip, to work in this job where I basically am able to have a lot more freedom than many other corporate type jobs would have, mostly because marketing is a big deal and I'm pretty much a rock star. But it's, there is a structure that needs to be abided by in a certain sense, a rules, a hierarchy, an understanding that I'm not going to go through, the building and make murder jokes as much as I probably can. Murder jokes and cocaine jokes and all that stuff that's going to get me fired. There's HR rules to follow, you have to kind of live within sort of the loose guidelines of the community in order to function without being kicked out or exiled, which is something I learned from the Stoics, which is probably another topic I'll do this week. So, respecting the rules, and I was talking about observations, but this kind of like transformed into respecting the community guidelines, as it were, which is true. I mean, you can sort of stretch the rules a little bit and change things up. Jamie Gold was a guy that won the 2008 World Series of Poker, and he won it by doing a lot of talking. That was probably one of the most interesting World Series of Poker because he talked a lot. He tried to convince people of like what his hand was or wasn't. He would often tell the truth, which was like one of my favorite tactics. He would often tell the truth about his hand, but because it's poker, you can't really tell if people are being truthful or not. So he was very, very talkative, and that he played that strength. He had a thing also where he would show one card and get people thinking. I thought that was fascinating also. He actually ended up making the rules change because of that year. So, try that. So poker also taught me about value and saving money, finances, because, well, money is your currency in poker, as it is in life. It taught me how to be a little bit more fearless with money when you're sure of what you're doing with it. So I would often, when I cashed in, I would get my chips. I would stop looking at it as money. I would look at it as pawns in a game. But through that also, because of the luck factor and the probability stuff, it taught me to be more aware of how I'm spending my money and how I'm using it, which are two of the same things that I just said back to back. I do that a lot. I like to say things twice, but in a different way. I don't know. That's just how I am. Anyway, so value is a big thing. I like to use the 4.5 to 1 probability thing, but you also think about how likely it is for someone to get aces in a hand, or how likely it is for someone to get a big hand, how likely it is for someone to get a certain hand, and how they're reacting based on their position at the table, which is more advanced stuff that doesn't really need to be gone into here, but how likely are you to get a certain good hand, and how you can play into that as well. But most likely you're just using basic math to look at how much money is in the table. It's like, all right, he bet $2, now there's $4 in the pot, now there's $6, blah, 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 blah. And being able to kind of do quick math. And that was, for me, I was always really good at that. I was really good at the quick math to the point where it impressed people. And one guy gave me a Mensa card, which I was like, I don't think that's necessary. But that was nice of him to think I'm smart. And but I do math pretty quickly, so that was pretty beneficial for me. But it's really just kind of like looking at the statistics and looking at the value of the situation, and also looking at the value of the risk. So if it's very likely, based on the mannerisms of the other people at the table, for you to be able to extract money from them, it might be that value, that amount of money that you might be willing to put into it would go higher. So that 4.5 to 1 that I was talking about before might change if you're playing with a loose player that is more likely to put money in the pot when your hand hits, so that when you have the best hand, you will extract the most value from him. So there's all these other extended concepts in poker called expected value, and all these other things that are talking about, like, based on the kind of player they are, if you're going to get extra money from them, or if they're a very tight player, meaning they only play premium hands, and you're likely to not, like, they're more likely to fold if they feel that they're lost, that they're losing. you're not going to get as much value out of them, so you'll have to risk less. So it's situational. You know, it's like making purchases. You want to look at, you know, for me, I like to look at the value of a product. If it's too expensive for what it's worth, I will not go that route. You know, I'm averse to, like, headphones is a good example. I recently bought some headphones that were in the $25 range, and they were decent quality, but not good enough for what I would expect $25 to be for headphones, which is not really high expected value. I feel like a good value for headphones is around maybe $60 to $70 if they're really good. It really depends on the audio quality and stuff like that. But, you know, it's one of those, like, you pay for what you get sort of things. You know, you pay too little, you know you're gonna not get much quality out of it. And if you pay too much, you're just a sucker. So it's a hard concept to really explain, because it's almost a matter of experience, one of those things. But I've been really great at assessing that. I'm still bad at it when it comes to food because I spend way too much money on food. But I know that I'm spending way too much money on food. So in a way, I kind of know what I'm doing, but still doing it anyway. So I don't know. It's kind of a vague concept, but percentages and value, that's another concept I learned from poker that I thought was kind of interesting to share. So the last concept I want to discuss is the control factor, the luck factor, because the thing that fascinated me the most, and the thing that they talk about a lot in the movie Rounders, which, if you've not seen Rounders, even if you're not a poker fan, or if you're a little bit interested in poker, you should watch that movie. It's one of Matt Damon's earlier ones. Matt Damon and Edward Norton, and they're fantastic together. It's such a great film. It's like the Bible of poker movies. So I suggest taking a gander at that one. So control and the luck factor is super fascinating, because you have way more control than you think you do. You have the decision for how much money you put in the pot, the decisions for whether or not to play a hand, decisions as to sometimes where to sit at the table, decisions as to, you know, decisions on each street. You know, as the three cards come out, you have a decision before the hand starts, when everybody's putting in their initial bets based on the cards that start. You have a decision whether or not to even sit down and play. So there's that. And then you know, you have your initial bets. You can choose whether or not to play the two cards you have in front of you, based on your position, based on the cards you have, based on the people you're playing with, etc., etc., etc. So you're assessing that situation even before you make any decision, even before you look at the cards. I've had plenty of times where I've won hands without even looking at my cards. It's kind of baller, actually. And then there are more decisions to be made throughout the hand. So when the dealer puts out the first three cards, the first three community cards called the flop, you do another round of betting and you make another decision based on the new information that you gather. So you're deciding, again, whether to play or call based on what's presented in front of you. Now, the luck factor is the cards that are in front of you. There is a random probability, but at the same time, it is one deck of cards, so you can do sort of a degree of card counting if you have an idea of, if you feel pretty confident in what the other players have, then you can kind of use that to your advantage as well. So if you feel like somebody has an ace-king, and there is a king on the board, and somebody else calls, and you're pretty sure that they also have a king, and you have a king in your hand, you can decide whether your king beats the other two, because there's going to be no other kings coming out, most likely. I don't like to live in absolutes if it's not absolutely revealed. So if I kind of hover in that area of, like, I think he's got ace king, I think he's got king queen. It could be this range of hands, 1, 2, or 3. He could just have queens and trying to protect it or something like that. So that's more advanced stuff again. But usually I put a range of hands out there and then make my decision based on that. And then another card comes out called 4th Street. I had a clothing brand called 4th Street Clothing, and that's why that was named that. Didn't really take off because I didn't design enough things. Laziness. And then I may revisit that one day, by the way. So I think it's still up, 4thstreetclothing.com. You can try to take a look. There's social channels too, 4th Street Clothing with the number 4, 4th ST Clothing, on Twitter, and then I think Instagram is fully spelled out. Anyway, there's really nothing on there anyway. So, and then you have the river, which is the 5th card that comes out, and you're making a decision on each street. So as you get new information, you're making decisions. You're really taking control of the situation, and taking control by putting bets out there to see, and sometimes taking control to see how people feel about the situation. So if everybody just checks, which is like passing on a bet, essentially, in Europe they call it passing, which makes more sense. You say pass, and you go to the next person, you will, sometimes you can put a feeler out there to control the situation. So you put out a small bet to see where people are at. Maybe somebody is waiting to raise after somebody bets. So you put out a small bet, which is of little value, doesn't really affect your bankroll, really just like the minimum bet, just to see how people feel. If they just call, maybe you don't get any new information, but you maybe know that they have enough of a hand to stick around for the next card. If they just fold, great, you eliminate some players. And if they raise, then you know they're trying to trap someone with minimal effort. So that's interesting. So you can put feelers out there to try to regain some knowledge about the situation, and you have more control than you think you do. I recorded a wrap-up segment and it kind of just disappeared, so I don't know what happened there. Weird. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to wrap this topic up because the poker thing is like a huge topic, and there's a reason I'm writing a book about it, because I can write an entire book about it. So when that comes out, if you're interested, I will let you know where you can pick that up, but it might be a little while because I haven't really looked at it in a bit. I started it like 2 years ago, and I have a full outline, and well, not really an outline, I have a first draft essentially, but I want to go back through it and add some personality to it and tell some personal stories as well, in a way that'll make it a little bit more interesting. So with that, I implore you to take some of these lessons of particularly having control. You have way more control over situations in life than you think you do. You can ask questions, you can talk to people, you can communicate properly, you can, convey what you're feeling. I know you have to live sometimes within a certain community guidelines, but you don't have to live within expectations. You don't have to live within what someone expects of you or hopes of you or wants of you. You do what you want, you do what you love, do what you enjoy, do what makes you happy, because then in turn you'll make other people happy. So don't sweat that so much. Don't sweat that. Don't sweat what other people feel you need to be. You need to be what you need to be in order to be an accomplished and successful and happy person in life. You need to do what you want for you, and you have way more control over that than you think you do. You can control your job situation. Oh, my job sucks. Well, find another job. I know it's not always that easy and that cut and dry, but you have way more control to start the process as much as possible. I'm not saying like walk into a job and say, hire me. It's like you can start the process of finding a new job. You have more control over over your fate than you think you do. You're unhappy in a relationship. Start making strides to find something else, whether that's for yourself or another person. Not usually another person. That's not always the best idea, but sometimes that helps. And I was trying to think of other situations, but right now those are the two that always stick out. So you just have more control than you think you do. So look at control, look at value. There is a luck factor in life a little bit, but usually you make your own luck, you make your own fate. So assessing value, assessing, I don't know, I'm tired. I don't have anything else. I hope you learned something from this. And if you have any questions, feel free to call in, and we could totally talk about it. Or hit me up on Instagram or Twitter at RivalMyDesign, and we could do this. So, on that note, I'll talk to you guys later.